Welcome to our channel No More Informations.
Over the past 100 years in the region of the infamous Bermuda Triangle, about 100 ships and aircraft had disappeared. While scientists are trying to find the cause of these mysterious disappearances and massive disasters in this area, similar anomalies have appeared around the world. So what could be more dangerous than the Bermuda Triangle? Dozens of such messages are stored in the black boxes of planes that crashed over the Bermuda Triangle under mysterious circumstances. It covers the territory from the Bermuda Islands in Florida to Puerto Rico. The area of this territory is quite large and is approximately. It's also a place for the deepest point of the Atlantic Ocean, the Milwaukee Deep, which would fit almost 1.5 Mount Kilimanjaros. Therefore, it isn't strange that the parts of many ships, aircraft missing in this region haven't been found yet. Even when the researchers managed to find the lost ships, what they saw there didn't make any sense. For example, in 1944, all contact with it had been lost a month before it was found, when it left Cuba for Havana. So everyone believed the ship that sunk relatives of the passengers would crazy trying to figure out where their loved ones had gone. The military immediately saw that the ship was safe and sound and rushed to save the people on board. But even though where 300 people were supposed to be on board there, ship, a dog that came from nowhere ran around the deck end. There wasn't a human soul to be found or there. Belongings and food supplies surprisingly remained intact, as if the passengers had simply evaporated from the ship. An incident in this isn't the only case like this. Earlier similar situation happened to the French ship Rosalia, which was heading to Havana from Hamburg in 1840. It was found in the Sargasso Sea near the Bermuda Trip. The time on this ship seemed to have been frozen as well. Lunch was waiting for the sailors in the kitchen, but there wasn't a single person on board, only a starving canary trapped in its cage. Precisely the same story happened on the American ship called the Mary Celeste in 1872. Is on its way from New York to Italy through the Bermuda Triangle and was found only a year later near the Azores on board. They even found untouched treasures in the captain's cabin, as well as a surviving cat. But the crew itself seems to have evaporated as well. But the worst thing that makes this zone so deadly is the fact that it extends not only across the sea, but also into the sky. In 1945, Flight 19, a squadron of 5 U.S. Navy torpedo bombers simply vanished into thin air during the routine. Exercise the theory of the simultaneous failure of all 5 aircraft seems impossible. Besides, they were thoroughly tested before there are even more logical gaps in there. Story of what happened to a Beechcraft Bonanza plane on December 4th, 1970. The pilot and 2 passengers took off from Andros Island in the Bahamas and headed for the coast of Florida. They had to cover a distance of 400 kilometers, which usually takes 90 minutes of flight time at an altitude of 3,500 meters. The pilot saw a strange cloud of a cylindrical shape. The diameter of this height was more than 1 kilometer, and the length seemed endless since it was gigantic. The pilot had no choice but to pass through the cloud when the plane flew into it. It became dark as night. Suddenly, bright white flashes began to appear around the aircraft, which illuminated everything around. However, according to the pilot, it wasn't like that. He had already begun to say goodbye to life, but after about a minute he saw the light at the end of the tunnel. The cloud tunnel began to narrow at the same time. All the electronic devices stopped working and the compass needle rotated and spun randomly. At some point, the pilot felt weightless, and the plane broke out of the clouds. At the same time, it turned out they were already almost in Miami, although only 47 minutes of flight time had passed. The plane had also used much less fuel than usual. No one who was on board that day has a clue how they managed to get there ahead of time. But the most inexplicable story to this day is the loss of Pan. American World Airways Flight 914 with 57 passengers on board. On July 2nd, 1955, the plane took off from New York and was supposed to land in Miami 3 hours later, but it just disappeared from all radars. Its wreckage was never found for quite a long time. It was believed that the plane had crashed and all the passengers had died. 37 years later, the Weekly World News published an unusual article about this flight. It said that on September 9th at the Caracas airport in Venezuela, out of nowhere a new dot appeared on the radar as a plane had just popped into being from non-existence after landing. The pilot contacted the tower and asked where he was because he needed to get to the Miami airport at a specific time, namely at 9:55 a.m. on July 2nd in 1955. The man was told it was 1992 when the panic-striking captain began to shout for the airport personnel not to approach his plane. He started the engines again, and without waiting for permission to take off, lifted the plane into the air, disappearing from radar again. Although these incidents in the Bermuda Triangle, they're quite mysterious, the Weekly World, the news probably shouldn't be trusted. The tabloids' writers come up with paranormal explanations for all different kinds of incidents in America and around the world, so that more people buy their newspapers, which are excitingly different from other newspapers. Nonetheless, scientists continue to explore this dangerous zone, and they're still trying to find a scientific explanation for the catastrophes that happen here. These were the last words of the pilot of Flight N3808H on June 28th in 1980. From the moment the message was recorded meant to this day, the plane, along with its crew, is considered missing in the Bermuda Triangle, but no one knows exactly what objects in the sky scared the pilot. Each has their own theory. Some researchers suggest that the cause of shipwrecks in this area is a large number of shades and reefs. But this theory was worth considering only many years ago, when wooden ships crossed the ocean. For modern equipment on ships, this isn't really a serious problem any. More other researchers are interested in masses of bubbles in the Bermuda Triangle waters, which appear from cracks in tectonic plates. According to these researchers, this is an explosive methane gas that turns into giant bubbles. When they reach the surface, they can destroy or even swallow the entire ship. But this theory doesn't consider that some ships that disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle were nevertheless found. Moreover, absolutely intact. And yet there is one theory that can't explain this. Geologists say that during the storm, waves can generate infrason, which has a harmful effect on the nervous system. As a result, a ship's crew panics. Fear overpowers common sense if people simply rush overboard. That's why so many ships were found in the Bermuda Triangle with passengers and with all their belongings and intact. 3 theories have nothing to do with airplanes. A fairly reasonable theory was proposed by a meteorologist, one Steve Miller, in NASA satellite images. He noticed unusual hexagonal clouds with straight edges over the Bermuda Triangle. Miller suggests they're capable of generating something called aerial bombs. These are sharp currents of wind that can reach the speed of a hurricane of 300 kilometers per hour. This force is enough to sink even a fairly large ship or provoke an aircraft demise in a matter of minutes. But to confirm this theory, additional observations are needed. After all, the pictures don't show that they're in the funnels. The book The Triangle has become famous thanks to a large number of investigations in the media, documentaries, and feature films. Due to this, ordinary people are also attempting to solve this mystery. For example, under an article about the triangle in the comments, a certain Jaden Hunsaker put forward her own hypothesis. She explains why not only ships, but also planes disappear in the triangle. The thing is that Christopher Columbus, during his sea voyage in 1492, saw a flash in the sky. In his logbook there were records that the sky suddenly became bright, after which the compass needles began to behave strangely. The girl suggests that this flash could be a magnetic asteroid, and since planes and ships are made of metal, they could just be attracted to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, fueled the magnetic celestial body that fell into it. Science has indeed encountered asteroids that have their own magnetic field. There was one thing. If such an object fell into the ocean, then the 15th century records of this would have been preserved not only in Columbus's journal, and Columbus himself, who was close to the crash site, once he felt the magnetic effect of the asteroid on himself, would have perished in a giant tsunami. But while some are trying to approach the meter triangle scientifically, conspiracy theorists have also found what they think is the most logic. Their answer: they believe that this zone is a hotspot for alien activity, where extraterrestrial beings are abducting people to study them. Therefore, on all the ships found in the Bermuda Triangle, only animals have survived, and the valuable cargo was untouched. There is a lot of evidence to support this hypothesis. One of them is documented in the Greek daily newspaper, Artist Masters Press of August 17, 1995. Benzos, the sailor, claimed that during one of them trips to the sea, he thought something was wrong when the ship began to go through the waves incredibly fast over the equipment, showed the usual speed, and the sensations didn't let the sailor down. A few minutes later, a complete devilry began on board. At first, the captain of the ship became very sick. It seemed to him that his hands very heavy, and he couldn't raise them to the helm, and the helmsman couldn't keep a steady course because the compass was spinning like crazy. The crew then noticed that all the clocks on the boat had gone ahead by 2 hours. Suddenly, Spencer saw a large, white, unidentified flying object in the sky, joined by 2 more small ones. The sailor immediately ran to send a message. Well, what had happened using Morse code, but noticed that he suddenly began to move very slowly at the same time. Another sailor tried to light a cigarette. At the same time, the entire ship's crew felt an abnormally slow heart. Bates Spencers is fully convinced he encountered something extraterrestrial that day in the Bermuda Triangle that could manipulate time. Sometimes. For example, this photo was taken by the U.S. Air Force in 2020. However, attempts to unravel the mysteries of Bermuda Angle don't end with UFO explanations. For example, rendered Charles Burletz has his own theory. He claims that earlier on the territory of the Triangle it could have been the capital of an ancient developed civilization. Of course, most scientists consider such theories about the existence of lost cities only action and myth. But there are those who, like Bullets, don't doubt the existence of Atlanta, as the writer believes that the inventions of the ancient that allows one to accumulate space energy in a crystal. With its help, it was possible to create solar and stellar rays similar to lasers. They were mainly used in construction, but in our time, they could well destroy modern technology. When a big flood covered Atlantis, the crystals also went to the bottom. But that didn't stop them doing their job. That's why sailing or flying through this area, equipment and compasses fail. Unlike scientists, hypothesis theories about UFOs and Atlantis explain all the oddities of the triangle. But at the same time, the existence of UFOs in the mythical city of Atlantis hasn't yet been proven by science. So, neither one nor the other has convincing evidence, and so we still don't know how to protect people from incidents in this area. Meanwhile, similar anomalies occurred in other parts of the world. All right, if you wait briefly, what is the traffic you're having? I have a marine emergency, and I would like to speak to a key. More than one team of sailors tried to save their ship. Haven't gotten into dangerous waters between Bermuda, Florida, and Puerto Rico. But this is not the only danger zone in the world. One of these anomalies attracts scientists, tourists, and extreme divers. We're talking about Australia, the west coast of which can be called the capital of shipwrecks. So many people died in these waters that they're legends about ghosts among the locals and tourists to this date. Literally, swim among the core. Visits in 2022 links to chapter spent her holidays on Magnetic Island, swimming in the ocean off northern Australia. When the girl returned home and began to look through her photos, she noticed a terrible detail in one of them. In the background, ghostly hand reaches out to her leg. This turned out to be the severed limb of a human skeleton back in 1770. Noticed that the ship's compass was out of order, as if there was a magnet nearby. This is how Magnetic Island got named, due to such inexplicable anomalies in the water around Magnetic Island in general. The entire coast of the continent, about 13,000 kilometers long, is full of the wreckage of about 1,600 sunken ships. And in these waters, the remains of the bodies of dead sailors. They're still being round since the end of the 16th century. This place has become a cemetery for Dutch, British, and Portuguese ships that run their way from Europe to Indonesia. They went to far east into the waters of war and vanished, but nevertheless mysterious events. With the Devil's Triangle. These were the last words of a Japanese fighter pilot in August 1945 during the crash over the zone. The Devil's Triangle spans Pacific waters near Tokyo. Judging by ancient legends, people used to believe that the ocean was home to dragons, cheap taxi killers, and set them back in 1274 and 1281. Kublai Khan, the fifth great Khan of the empire and grandson of Genghis Khan, tried to invade Japan. However, both times he mysteriously lost his ships and about 40,000 crew members. The Japanese believed that it was the gods stopped the conquerors. Later, at the beginning of the 20th century, fishing ships and warships often sank in this area, also in the Dragon Triangle. A research ship with 100 scientists who tried to unravel the anomaly disappeared without a trace. But the most exciting thing is that the Devil's and Bermuda Triangles are very similar. They're located at the same latitude on the east coast of large continental masses in the Devil's Triangle, as well as in the Bermuda Triangle. There are also some of the deepest places in the sea in the Devil's Triangle's case. The Mariana Trench. These two anomalies are like twins, and the Japanese pilot who shouted about the open sky once we got into the same kind of cloud tunnels the Beechcraft Bonanza play. The Bermuda Triangle and the Devil's Triangle combined. For hundreds of years, many strange things have been happening in the lake, but the most interesting thing having collected the locations of all the incidents. On one map, the researchers found that the dangerous area in these waters, the Michigan Triangle, it's located in the center of the largest American lake, and in it, there have been many mystical and mysterious catastrophes. For example, In 1950, Northwest Airlines Flight 2501, carrying 55 passengers and 3 crew members, was flying from New York to Minneapolis, flying over the Michigan Triangle. It seemed to disappear into thin air. But here not only planes and boats mysteriously disappear, but people who were just walking along the coast. Well, in 1978, Michigan private Christian University student Stephen Kabatsky was skiing along the shores of the lake, but one day he disappeared without a trace. When the police went looking for him, they noticed the trail of his footprints. It led along the shore of Lake Mead and suddenly broke off. Due to the lack of any other evidence, the police thought that the guy got lost and froze too, although his body was never found. His loved ones were still mourning their loss a year later when suddenly Stephen was found alive and, well, more than happened that day and why he ended up in this place. The guy remembered absolutely nothing, and this is not the only mystery. The Michigan Triangle at its bottom. Mysterious ancient structures have been found, however. At present, researchers are keeping the locations of secret, according to the official version. This was done in order to protect the ancient underwater ruins from vandals. Currently, scientists don't know what created these stone compositions. Nature, humanity, or someone or something else. Local residents say they often seem bright, flashing lights above the water, and believe the stone structures and disasters in this area are somehow connected to UFOs. In 1883, the sailors of the wooden tub, both Mary McLean, said they saw huge blocks of ice falling from the sky all over the lake for 30 minutes. This strange rain didn't stop and was so powerful that left dents on the wooden surface of the tug. The crew members even kept a large piece of the ice, and the pantry is show it is proof. If no one, leave them. Their story was still perceived to be a lie, as there are few logical explanations for the occurrences in these anomalous areas, and governments simply ignore the existence of these dangerous triangle zones. They aren't even marked them world maps, and thus from year to year, passengers and planes, crews of ships, and even ordinary tourists are exposed to unknown dangers. Evidence of incidents in the Bermuda Triangle had been preserved not only in airplane black boxes. Nowadays, such catastrophes can actually be observed in real time. In 2015, 2 14-year-old boys from Florida, keeping it a secret from their parents, went to the Bahamas and shared everything on Snapchat. Suddenly, one of them posted a video of an incoming storm with a tragic caption in 2016. The Coast Guard unexpectedly found the boat of Perry. Most likely, the storm brought the children into the Bermuda Triangle. The boat was empty, and the bodies of the boys were never found.